The disappearance of Hoer Verde. This small town in Brazil once housed 600 citizens who suddenly vanished without a trace. Supposedly a rather bustling community, it is thought to have disappeared sometime in 1923. A group of visitors stopped by the small village when they were greeted with an eerie silence. Virtually no one remained. The houses looked as though they were abandoned in a hurry, and food and personal artifacts were left behind untouched. The visitors contacted local law enforcement, who subsequently launched an investigation, but could not find any sign of the inhabitants' whereabouts. One odd clue left behind was a gun that looked as though it had been recently fired, and a mysterious message written on a blackboard that read, "There is no salvation." One of the most bizarre theories floating around states that the 600 residents of Hoer Verde were swallowed by a black hole, taking them all to a fourth dimension. Another theory states that the residents might have been abducted by the aliens. And another theory claims that perhaps the residents were evacuated by soldiers or revolutionaries. As disturbing as this may be, no one has been able to confirm what exactly happened in Hoer Verde. The Roman 9th Legion. The disappearance of the 9th Legion is considered to be one of the greatest mysteries of history. The 9th Legion was a Roman military formation of around 5,000 soldiers stationed in York, northern England, during Rome's occupation of Britain. It was one of Rome's oldest, most reliable, and most formidable fighting forces. They were considered an elite legion. The legion maintained control of the wild inhabitants of what would later become northern England and Scotland. Sometime around the year 117 AD, the 9th Legion marched north to deal with a rising among the Caledonian tribes. They were never heard of again. The 9th Legion just simply vanished from history and the archaeological record without a trace, and became the Lost Legion of Rome. What could have happened to erase the existence of 5,000 soldiers? No one really knows. However, there are various theories surrounding the demise of the 9th. One theory suggests the Legion was simply sent elsewhere, though there's little evidence to support this. Meanwhile, Emperor Hadrian visited the British Isles at the beginning of the 2nd century. To take control of the Briton-on-Roman violence, he ordered the construction of a 73-mile-long, 15-foot-high fortified wall across the island to keep the invaders out of Roman territory. Hadrian's wall still stands today. However, there's still no sign of the ultimate fate of the 9th Legion. And there probably never will be. However, it is important to note that some people in York claim to have seen the ghosts of the lost 9th Legion. One of the most notable sightings was the one that occurred in the early 1950s. A young plumber, by the name of Harry Martindale, had been repairing a boiler in the basement of the treasurer's house, which stands close to York Minster. He was about to pack away his tools when he heard what sounded like a trumpet. He thought at first it was perhaps a brass band in the street outside, and so paid it little attention. Then came a second blast, only this time much louder and much closer. It appeared to be coming from the far end of the cellar. Harry peered into the dimly lit cavernous surroundings, yet saw nothing. He was about to continue packing away his things when he found himself seized with horror. A horse's head suddenly appeared from out of the wall at the far end of the cellar. Its rider was then revealed, followed by 15 Roman soldiers. The weary and dejected-looking soldiers paid no attention to Harry as they shuffled their way across the cellar floor, only to disappear into the opposite wall. Harry claimed never to have had a paranormal experience until that day in the cellar, nor had he experienced one since. The Anjikuni village disappearance. One of the greatest mysteries in the world is the mysterious disappearance of an entire village near Anjikuni Lake, in Canada, during the 1930s. In 1932, a Canadian fur trapper named Joe went to a village near Anjikuni Lake in Canada. He knew this establishment very well, as he would often go there to trade his fur and spend his leisure time. On this trip, he arrived at the village and made a disturbing discovery. He found the village to be completely empty and eerily silent, even though there were signs that there were people there a while ago. This had never happened to him coming to this village. People in this village have a reputation for hospitality. No matter whether it's day or night, they always welcome their guests and arrange meals and delicious foods for them. This is why some of their special guests like Joe used to visit them regularly. Between 2,000 and 3,000 people. Men, women, and children seemed to have evaporated into thin air. Each shack he examined came up empty, and nothing had been taken from them. All the food, supplies, and weapons were there. What's even more puzzling is that not a single footprint was present anywhere in the village. If we assume that the villagers had to evacuate the place for whatever reason, at least they would leave behind a footprint because the paths and the grounds were all covered with snows. But to Joe's surprise, he couldn't see the footprints anywhere other than his own boots. Now, he realized that something must have gone wrong, so he immediately went to the nearby telegraph office and reported to the hill police forces about what he witnessed. The police reached the village and conducted an extensive search for the villagers, but were unable to trace them. However, they found something really strange. Almost all the graves in the village cemetery were empty and the bodies were taken away by someone. Afar from the village, 7 corpses of dogs who starved to death were discovered, tied to some tree stumps. It appeared that the dogs were trying to protect their masters from something or someone. To this date, there's no proper explanation for the mass disappearance of the Anjikuni villagers. Though it is important to note that 3 days prior to the disappearance, other villagers near Anjikuni Lake reported that they had seen strange blue lights in the sky. Many people believe the Anjikuni people were actually abducted by aliens and the blue lights were their craft. The Flannan Isles Lighthouse. On the 26th of December 1900, the lighthouse tender vessel Hesperus approached the tiny island of Eilean Moor to investigate a reported problem with the island's lighthouse. On approaching the island, the lighthouse sat eerily unresponsive to the ship's calls and signals. When relief keeper Joseph Moore was sent to investigate further, he was met with an eerie silence. Moore found the main door and gate to the compound closed, the beds unmade, and the clock stopped. He also found a set of oilskins, suggesting that one of the keepers left without them, which is unusual and worrying, considering the poor weather conditions that had been recorded. The island was searched for clues or any sign of the keepers, but nothing was found. The west landing had received considerable damage, with a turf ripped up and a box of supplies destroyed. The keeper's logs proved that this damage had occurred before the disappearance. The log leading up to the men's disappearance included some strange entries, with descriptions of an awful storm, high winds, and low spirits amongst the keepers. There were however no reports of storms in the area in the days leading up to the disappearance, meaning that the poor weather conditions recorded in the log were either made up or localized. To this day no one knows what took place in the lighthouse that night, though many theories have developed over the years. One theory suggests that the psychology of the lighthouse keepers played a part in the disappearance. One of the 3 men, MacArthur, had a reputation for brawling and was known to be violent. It is suggested by some that a fight broke out on the cliff edge, causing the men to fall to their deaths. Another theory suggests that a giant sea monster leapt out of the water and snatched the 3 men from the cliff edge. Other theories suggest that the 3 men might have been abducted by spies or aliens, or perhaps they had simply escaped to start new lives. The 5th Norfolk Battalion. During World War I, in August 1915, the 5th Battalion of the Royal Norfolk Regiment disappeared without a trace, in the middle of the Dardanelles countryside, after entering into a strange cloud. How did an entire battalion vanish into thin air? Nobody knows. Between March and December of the year 1915, England and France tried to take control of the Dardanelles, a strategic point controlling communications between the Mediterranean and the Russian ports of the Black Sea. But the armies of the Ottoman Empire, commanded by the Germans, kept the Western Expeditionary Force in check. The losses were so great that the Allies finally abandoned the game in December 1915. The story of the Norfolk disappearance is told by the tales of Commonwealth soldiers who attended the event. On August 21, 1915, during the attack on the Gallipoli Peninsula, 22 New Zealand soldiers from an engineering company saw the 5th Norfolk Regiment, which numbered 267 men, coming to the rescue of the Anzac. Attacking Hill 60, south of Suvla Bay. Norfolk soldiers enter a strange cloud. At the moment when all the men have disappeared behind the curtain of mist, the cloud rises gently, then moves away in the sky against the wind, and soon escapes the eyes of observers. No longer is a living being visible in the small valley, and Turkey claims to have never captured anyone from the Royal Norfolk Regiment. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, hit the like button, and stay tuned for more videos in the near future. Thank you for watching.